New on the Creation Club is Virtual Workshop, Limitless Possibilities. Travel to new worlds from the comfort of your settlement with the VR Workshop. Transport yourself to a series of exotic landscapes, such as a desert island and the iconic GNR Plaza from the capital wasteland, featuring over 40 new craftable items, weather and music options, enemy spawns, nearly limitless settlement building, and 4 new worlds to choose from. Created by Rob Vogel, Fading Signal. Creation appears in Workshop mode. Virtual Workshop is going for 1,000 credits. But is it worth it? Let's find out. Upon arrival in the Commonwealth, nothing happens at all. Okay. Heading to our nearest settlement, we can crack open the workshop to see if we can find this virtual workshop, and sure enough, we find it in the Creation Club section at the very end, under VR Workshops. Here we find one item, a VR pod. Thankfully, we don't need any perk requirements to build this. All we need is 6 steel, 2 copper, 4 glass, and 2 circuitry. But to get it to work, we've got to power it. Once powered, if we try to activate it, we get the message, no destination set. Select simulation from a workshop terminal. Okay. Setting down a workshop terminal, as long as it's connected to the same electrical network that the VR pod is connected to, we find an option for VR pod control. Vaultec Virtual Reality Simulation Control Panel. Select a VR destination. We can choose Grid World, Capital Wasteland, Desert Island, or Atomic Crater. We'll choose Grid World for now. When ready, we can hop inside the VR pod. Savvy-eyed viewers will recognize this as a memory lounger, which Fallout 3 fans will in turn recognize as the Tranquility Lane loungers. However, instead of a TV, we see some sort of projection device at the end of a disco ball. Enter VR Workshop Grid World? Yes. We arrive in the Grid World. You've entered a VR workshop. These are special workshops with a large settlement budget and free crafting materials. Build as much as you want. Real-world settlers or supply lines cannot be sent into VR workshops, but virtual settlers can be generated using the terminal found near the entry area. The VR Workshop terminal will also allow you to customize a number of other options or travel to other VR simulations. And we see that Preston is here. Oh, hey buddy. I don't remember him stepping into the lounger with me. Well, it looks like we can bring our companions with us to this virtual landscape. Directly before us, we find a workshop and a VR Workshop terminal. Inside the terminal, we find quite a list of options. We'll start from the top. If we try to start attack mode, we get a message, no enemy spawners found. Looks like we've got some building to do. Cracking open the workshop, we see the same menu we're familiar with in the real world. In these virtual workshops, we have access to everything we have access to in our real settlements, including all Creation Club items and all installed mods. At least in my game, I was able to access all of the settlement building mods that I had installed. Navigating back to the Creation Club section of the workshop, we can again scroll all the way to VR Workshops. Here, we find 2 new items. The one we are interested in is the VR attack markers. Each of these pyramid attack markers will spawn a new enemy. We'll start with the alien. You've crafted a VR enemy attack marker. Enemies will spawn at these markers when attack mode is enabled at the VR control terminal. This terminal can be found near the entry area. Turning off attack mode from the terminal will stop the attack and remove all enemies from the simulation. Only 30 attack markers can be functional at a given time. There are fewer than 30 attack marker creatures that we can place, so we are able to spawn at least one of every enemy at any given time. In addition to the alien, there's the Assaultron, the Blood Bug, the Courser, the Deathclaw, the Feral Ghoul, the Glowing One, the Gorilla, the Gunner, the Mirelurk, the Mirelurk King, the Mole Rat, the Mr. Gutsy, the Protectron, the Radroach, the Rad Scorpion, the Raider Dog, the Sentry Bot, the Stingwing, the Super Mutant Behemoth, the Synth, and the Yaogwai. That's 24 different creatures that we can spawn. After exiting the workshop, we immediately notice that the spawn marker pyramids are still visible. So bear this in mind, if we create a big, beautiful, lavish settlement and we place down these spawn markers, they will be visible throughout the settlement. When ready, we can go back to the VR terminal and start attack mode. Attack mode started. Eliminate the hostiles. And they all spawn in at once, and they attack each other. There are a number of things to notice. The first is that we don't take damage. It appears as if this isn't the Matrix. We can't die in this simulation, and we can't take any damage. However, as you can see, any damage we bring with us into the simulation stays with us. Here my character still has rads. But, rather counterintuitively, we do consume ammunition. So we can't take real damage, but we do spend real bullets in this simulation. Since the creatures aren't real, they are somewhat transparent. When they die, we can't loot them, but some of them can spawn as legendary creatures, and the legendary creatures can mutate. That works fine in the simulation. I found that most of the enemies did not grant experience upon killing them, but there was one that did. There you see, I just got some experience there. I don't know exactly which one it was, because Preston killed him. However, I found another one upon killing the Institute Courser. And then I found a third upon the death of the legendary Deathclaw. And a fourth is the Mr. Gutsy, which also granted experience. So at least 4 of these virtual creatures do grant experience upon death, probably unintentionally. This virtual space is huge, and because of that, some of these creatures ran far afield. I had to chase down a gunner colonel to finally kill him. Once the final one is dead, we complete the miscellaneous quest to eliminate the hostiles. If at any time we want to end the attack, we can simply go back to the terminal and choose Stop Attack Mode. Attack mode stopped. When the enemies are dead, we see traces of blood and debris from explosions, but no bodies to loot. Next, we can try to generate a VR settler. Backing out. Nothing happens. So I experienced a bit of a bug on my primary game installation. I tried this command a number of times, and I could never get a VR settler to spawn. I thought for a moment that maybe they spawned the settler far off in the grid somewhere, so I created one of the new items that came with this VR workshop, the VR Bell, which is supposed to gather nearby settlers to the bell. Also, we can craft a VR siren, which functions just like a siren in the base game, alerting nearby settlers when the settlement is attacked. But even after ringing the bell, nothing happened. No settlers ever came by. This is due to a conflict with my modded game installation. I saw reports online that summoning settlers was indeed functioning, so I created a fresh installation of Fallout 4 on a completely different computer and created a brand new character. In my unmodded installation of Fallout 4, I was able to generate settlers. I'm not the only one to have experienced this. I saw a few other reports online of people with modded games being unable to generate a settler, but it looks like the settler generation function does work for most installations. Now, the settler we get is randomly generated. We can't control the settler's gender, any of their facial features, the way they dress, any of their inventory, or what level they are. We can assign them like usual, but we can't trade with them. We can't share their inventory or dress them up the way we want. I wanted to see exactly how many settlers we could summon, so I summoned a bunch, and then I summoned a bunch more until the maximum number of VR settlers had been spawned. Opening up the workbench, looks like it's 20, so we can't have more than 20 settlers in each of our VR settlements. Next, we can change the weather. Each of these VR workshops comes with a default weather. We can choose clear, which looks like this. Put some clouds up in the sky and some haze on the horizon. Then there's overcast, which looks like this. Big, thick, overcast clouds in the sky, nice. Then there's foggy, which looks like this. So it's a lot like default, only the fog is a bit thicker and more opaque. Then there's the glowing sea fog, which puts in a thick, yellow, nasty-looking fog, just like we'd find in the glowing sea. Then there's misty, which gives us a nice misty ambiance. Then there's misty rain, which gives us a nice misty ambiance with a bit of drizzle. Then there's rad storm. Oh, and it feels like we're in the middle of the glowing sea. Radiation, lightning, and thunder crackling off in the distance. And finally, we can choose rain, which gives us a nice heavy downpour. Now, each of these weather options isn't permanent. They last for a good long while, but after a couple of in-game hours, weather will change, just like weather changes over time back in the Commonwealth. Next, we can move on to render mode. The default one is no effect. That's what we see now. Then there's sepia tone. Oh, look at that. Looks like we're in Tranquility Lane. I bet you could make a carbon copy of Tranquility Lane with this sim. Then there's the black and white render mode. Very similar to sepia tone, only black and white. You could do a film noir settlement. Then there's dream state. Whoa. Everything is big and bright. Now, as I'll demonstrate later, these render modes do persist from workshop to workshop. So if you change render mode here at the grid space, it'll remain the same when you arrive at GNR Plaza, the island, or the atomic crater. But of course, you can always change it back. Then there's change music. Each of these world spaces has a default music. We can change the background music to Commonwealth, which sounds like this. Give it a minute. Very nice. Then there's Coast. And this is the only one I couldn't get to work. However, all of the others do work. We can change it to Capital Wasteland, which sounds like this. Oh, I know that song. And it plays a snippet from the Fallout 3 soundtrack. I'm feeling nostalgic already. Back in the terminal, we can change the music to Dungeon. Sounds like this. Ooh, spooky. Feel like I'm being stalked by a mole rat. Going back, we can change the music to Sanctuary. Sounds like this. Oh, I didn't realize this was the Sanctuary theme. I thought it was a Minuteman theme. Well, the Minutemen do occupy a sanctuary, so I suppose they could be one and the same. Love it. Then we can change the music to Show Tune. What? They listed this as Show Tune? Well, Fallout 3 fans will instantly recognize this as the theme to Tranquility Lane. It was the sort of Leave It to Beaver-esque music that plays in the background of the Tranquility Lane simulation. Fitting that they add it here. I mean, as this is a Vault-Tec simulation, that music would be here. So it's a nice little touch. Stanislaus Braun would approve. And finally, we can change it to urban. And we get some music that apparently plays in urban environments. A nice little piece. Feel like I'm in downtown Boston. And that's it for music. The final two options are to change the VR simulation or to exit. And before we do either, there are a few tests I want to run. As advertised, there are essentially no limits to what we can build. Each of these workshops has infinite resources, so even though each of these pieces does consume a resource, we never run out of resources to spend. Notice that as I build, my size meter does increase, but it increases very slowly. I went hog wild on my other computer. I wanted to see exactly what it would take to break these settlements. I generated 20 settlers and just started building and building and building to see how much of this meter I could consume. And my computer crashed before the meter filled halfway. I don't think it was a hardware issue. You can see the PC part picker lists for both of my computers in the description of this video. I had dozens of traps on the ground and multiple dozens of these turrets on the ground, not to mention all of the spawn markers and the 20 settlers walking around, before it finally crashed. So the build limit is not unlimited, but it is essentially unlimited. It takes a whole lot to fill this meter. If your experience is anything like mine, your computer is likely to crash before you reach the limit. Then I wanted to see exactly how large this grid world space was. I decided to measure its height using the workshop wall tiles, so I toggled clipping and built up and up and up until I couldn't build up anymore. And I found that the limit was 21 of these walls. So you can essentially build a 21-story building in this grid world space before you run out of room. That's a huge tower. And take a look at the border of this world. There's the square perimeter of the thing, and it's just enormous. You can see the decals of the battle there on the ground beneath me, and that entire battle earlier just occupied a small circle in the middle of the square. So the grid world space is extremely tall and huge, plenty to work with. Now, there are new settlement items that come with this creation, but we'll tackle them when we visit our next location. Next, we'll move on to the capital wasteland. And we arrive inside the Early Dawn Elementary School near to GNR Plaza. This is the same location that we get to explore in the Capital Wasteland Mercenary Outfits creation, which is wonderful. Many of the viewers who watched my video on that creation were really bummed that we walked away without the ability to turn GNR Plaza into a settlement. Well, here you go. I mean, it's a virtual settlement, but close enough. With this, we have all the same options. We can change the weather, the music. Incidentally, the default music for each of these workshops is different. For example, the default music here at GNR Plaza is the Fallout 3 soundtrack. And it appears like there are a number of different songs in the Fallout 3 soundtrack. One notable feature missing from this list that I didn't realize that I needed until just now is the ability to change time of day. To change time of day, we have to do it the old-fashioned way. Sit down and wait. There, that's better lighting for a demonstration video. Incidentally, the door that led to the staircase in this building over here doesn't work. Remember, this is the door that led to the vertebrate landing pad at the top of this building that we accessed in my video on the Capital Wasteland Mercenaries. GNR Plaza here is a full canvas, looking as it did when we saw it during the events of Fallout 3. However, we can clear this canvas. Many of the items decorating this plaza can be scrapped. The rusty cars, the piles of concrete rubble, girders and rebar, even dirt piles, road chunks, litter decals can all be scrapped. Scrapping all of this stuff opens up the middle of GNR Plaza quite a lot, giving us much more room to work with. However, remember, everything bordered in yellow is something we can't get back. We can't craft it in the workshop menu, so once it's gone forever. There is so much to clear here, tons of rubble and junk. We can clear all of the alleyways between the buildings, the sandbag barricades, the rubble leading down to the metro station, behind which we find a door. But sadly, this door is non-functional. And heading into Early Dawn Elementary, we can scrap the huge rubble pile in the middle of the structure, revealing a large ruin that we can build in. Very cool. So yeah, after we scrap everything, GNR Plaza is a lot of real estate to work with. While we're here, we can explore one of the brand new workshop build sets, the Capital Wasteland build set. And here we find many of the doodads that we just scrapped, plus some extra stuff that's really cool. There's the metro station marker. We see these all around the Capital Wasteland during the events of Fallout 3. This one says GNR Plaza. Then there are 2 different metal benches we can build, one bent, disfigured one, and one perfect one. Then there's a ruined bus we can build, a city liner that we can walk up into, and there are 2 billboards. One is a dirty Corvega marketing billboard from Fallout 3, and the other is a clean version of the same billboard, though the picture is still weathered by time. Next, there are 2 different crosswalk stoplights that we can build. One has a single stoplight with 1 pedestrian walk sign, and the other has 2 stoplights with 2 pedestrian walk signs. These need power to function. We don't have to string them up to a power source like we do with street lamps. Instead, these work on ambient electricity. As long as they're next to a power-emitting source, like a power pylon, they will work. Once powered, we see that the street lamp portion lights up, as well as the stoplights and the do not walk signs. But the coolest thing is that we can interact with them. Activating it changes walk to do not walk, changes the light from green to red, and vice versa. Then there are 2 GNR billboard lamps, both of which require power and function on ambient electricity, so we don't have to wire them. The first is a small lamp, and the light source points up, so we should put it beneath the billboard if we're trying to light the billboard. And the second is a much larger version of the same lamp, nearly twice the size. Next is the GNR ceiling light, also working on ambient electricity, a really unique looking light that we can attach to the ceilings of our rooms. There's what it looks like all lit up. And then 2 Galaxy News radio wall signs, one very large one and one smaller one. These are the marquees that were above the door to Galaxy News Radio. Then there's the GNR Plaza fountain, which has the iconic globe with the rocket ship going around it. Then we've got 2 vertical GNR wall signs, one huge and one small of the GNR logo, the radio tower with the words GNR at the top. Then there's a metro sign, a common sight in the Capital Wasteland, a parking meter, and what's cool about this is we can interact with it. Here we go. Timer's ticking. And then we've got 2 planters, one ruined, partially destroyed planter, and one slightly more pristine planter, neither of which have any plants inside, however. Then there's a street lamp. It looks a lot like the 2 different crosswalks, but without the pedestrian crossing signs or the traffic lights. And just like with the crosswalks, we don't have to wire it. It just needs to be near to an ambient source of power. Then we've got 2 trash cans, a dented trash can and a pristine trash can. And then we've got 2 water towers, each of which produces water for our settlement. The first is a smaller water tower. Yeah, this is the small one. And we learned that our VR settlements do function the way that regular settlements do. We have to keep our settlers happy in all the same ways by providing defense, beds, water, and food. And the second is the large tower. This tower is so huge that it's too big for GNR Plaza. Even after scrapping everything here, I couldn't find a place for it. And I think we'll discover the reason for that in just a minute. Next, we can test the build height, pulling out the same warehouse wall tile. We can stack these on top of each other, and that's it. We discovered that the build height is much shorter than the grid world. Our build height here is only 6. I was only able to stack 6 of these walls on top of each other before the outline turned red, and I think this can explain why we couldn't place the large water tower. It was just too tall to fit in this world space. However, it does fit elsewhere. I traveled back to the grid world and was able to place it without any issue. I can only speculate as to why the build height for GNR Plaza is so much shorter than the grid world, and I think it's due to the ruined city in the background. The ruined buildings we see off in the distance aren't real buildings, they're just the shells of buildings, and I think if we were to build any taller, it would break the illusion. To really make this feel like the capital wasteland, we can change the weather to glowing sea fog. There we go, that's that thick misty green we remember from Fallout 3. I can hear Three Dog's voice already. That's it for GNR Plaza. We can now explore the desert island. We arrive at Desert Island West. Turning around, look at that, we find the ocean. And we see more land off to the northeast, and a ton of land behind us. Goodness, exactly how large is this place? I decided to run off north, and after a long while, I finally reached the other side of the island. It looks really long. Looking east or west, it seemed to continue forever. I finally made it to the western end of the island, and peering east, we see that it's a crescent. Toggle and clipping, we can hop into the sky, and sure enough, we see that it's a huge crescent-shaped island with one tiny mini island off to the south. Well, we are still at Island West. Opening up the build menu, we see that the boundaries of this settlement don't always reach the water. We can't build on every square inch of the island, just most of it. We can jump off this cliff face, but we can't build something that hangs over it. I ran as far east as I could, and it looks like the border of this build space is very irregular, ending at a green wall that passes through this part of the island. It was then I noticed undiscovered locations on my compass. Hopping out of the workshop and running as fast as I could towards one, I arrived at Desert Island North. It's a completely new settlement area. Toggling clipping, we can hop into the sky to see our build area. And it's huge. We begin to understand the layout here. Turning west, we see that the western workshop, where we just came from, could build on the beach and the island at the western tip of the crescent. Then the body of the crescent is split into 2 sections, bisected by a chasm. Here we are at the northern section. Hopping down and running south, we arrive at the chasm. On the other side of the gorge, we can run towards the next undiscovered location, and we arrive at Desert Island East. This allows us to build on the eastern side of the crescent, which includes another little island next to the gorge bisecting the crescent. Finally, we can move to the 4th and final undiscovered location. This brings us to that small beach island at the very end of the eastern tip of the crescent. Here we discover Desert Island South. Hopping into the workshop mode, here's the build area. This one gives us the most water to build in and the most beach to build upon. So with the desert island, we've got 4 workshops where we can build 4 settlements. Next, I wanted to test build height. We'll use the same method, starting not quite at sea level, but close enough. We can build into the sky, and I met the build height cap at 8 wall tiles. So it's a bit larger than the capital wasteland, but not nearly as tall as the grid world. Here's what the view looks like at the top of this tower. If we were to maximize our build height, this is what we would see. A pretty gorgeous view of this island. Next, we can explore the second and final workshop kit that comes with this creation, the Desert Island Workshop Kit. We find a lot of tropical goods here. There's a red beach umbrella, a blue and yellow beach umbrella, and then a green and white beach umbrella. Then we find two new building pieces, the bamboo wall and the bamboo doorway. These look nice, but they're a little disappointing because that's it for the bamboo build set. There's no bamboo floor, or bamboo door, or bamboo roof, or a grass thatch floor or roof. It's just these walls and the doorway. It seems a bit incomplete to me. At first I thought these beach towels might be the doors, but no, we can't snap them to the doorway. Instead, we hang them on the wall, which itself is a little weird. It's not like they're tapestries. There's a red beach towel, a blue beach towel, a teal beach towel, and a green beach towel. Then there's the beach chair, which has a nice rainbow color. And then we've got some bamboo furniture. There's a bamboo stool with back, and then a bamboo round stool without a backing. Then we've got two different trees. There's a tall palm tree. Here's what it looks like up close. Big fronds way up at the top and some spindly roots there at the bottom. Sadly, no coconuts that I could see. Then there's the second palm tree, which is a squat version. It's short and fat, and it looks a bit prickly. Again, no coconuts. Then we've got three different surfboards that we can put on the wall of our bamboo hut. There's the green surfboard, the blue surfboard, and the red surfboard. Then we've got two more stools. These are tiki bar stools. We put these on a flat surface, and they are both slightly different. There's the bar stool with the tongue sticking out, and there's the smiling bar stool. The stool with the tongue sticking out is slightly shorter than the stool with the guy smiling. We can sit on them, and if we do, we sit on them with the design on the reverse side behind us instead of in front of us. Then there's a wicker chair, and finally a tiki stand. The tiki stand isn't a shop. We can't assign settlers to it. I think it's just for decoration. But we can put a tiki stool behind it and pretend that we're serving up pina coladas. That's it for all of the new items that we can build with this creation. I should note that both of these sets can be used outside the simulation, both the GNR set and the Desert Island set. Like with GNR Plaza, we can mix and match weathers and render modes to achieve the desired effect, some of which can be surprising and dramatic. The one big omission that I notice with the Desert Island is we can't fast travel between any of the settlements, and it's a huge island. So if we decide to build here, we're gonna have to huff it. I hope your character has running shoes. Finally, we can travel to the atomic crater. We arrive at the atomic crater. Notice that everything looks really bright. That's because I had been testing the Dream State render mode on the island before transferring here, and the render mode persisted. So this is what the atomic crater looks like with the Dream mode turned on. Activating the workshop, looks like we have a big build space zipping on into the sky here. Well, everything's really murky because we've got the glowing sea fog activated. Tell you what, let's turn that weather off for now so we can get a better sense of this settlement's boundaries, and we'll turn the render mode back to no effect. And that's the border. We see that we're at the bottom of a large crater. The settlement boundary is almost a perfect circle. We can't build up the side of the crater, but we can build on almost every square inch within the crater. There are a number of things lying around the world that we can scrap, ruins, garbage. There's even the steeple of a church buried in the mud that we can scrap if we want. But remember, we can't build these once they're gone, so bear that in mind. Finally, I wanted to test the build height. Using the exact same wall, we'll perform the same test And we end at 9. 9 walls high is the tallest we can build here in the middle of the atomic crater. So it looks like in terms of build height, the grid world far and away gives us the most freedom. Then there's Glowing Sea, then Desert Island. And the most restrictive is going to be GNR Plaza, which incidentally has the most complex skyline. The atomic crater is huge. It'll take you a good 30 seconds to run from one side of the crater to the other. But the crater itself is all we have access to. The ridges of the crater are too steep to climb up, so we are pretty much stuck in here. When done, we can choose to exit the VR simulation. Exit VR simulation? Yes. VR simulation updating. Please exit terminal to continue. We arrive back in the Tranquility Lounger, and we emerge back into our settlement as if nothing had changed. After exiting, I did a bit more experimenting. First, I ensured that the render modes stayed in the virtual spaces and didn't follow us back into reality. And it looks like that was done correctly. However, I experienced something really weird when I went to kill raiders at Dunwich Borers. Immediately after exiting the simulation, I got into a firefight and then just stood there. I didn't take any damage. For a moment there, I thought maybe I had God mode turned on, so I toggled the console. No, it was off. I was clearly being struck because I was killing enemies with ricochet. But look at my health, it's not moving at all. I then wanted to make sure I didn't have some modded clothing that were interfering, so I stripped my character down, taking everything off. But no, I still did not take damage. But then, what the heck? I didn't change anything. I didn't put anything back on, I didn't toggle the console, I didn't take any chems. I suddenly started taking damage again. After clearing the quarry, I wanted to make sure that we could still take falling damage.
Jesus, be careful.
And we can. That's good. I tested this again. Right after exiting the lounger, I threw a grenade. Nothing. I also inadvertently angered all of my settlers and they began to attack me. And for a while, I again was invincible. All my robot provisioners, all my settlers attacking me, and I was taking no damage. But then a short while later, I started to take damage. I didn't do anything, no console commands, no chems, no armor changes. It just fixed itself. I then tried testing this with radiation, and radiation appears to work normally. Straight from Country Crossing, I went to those dilapidated nuclear material storage tanks and began to take on rads like it was no one's business. After exiting the lounger, I then tried fast traveling to the fallen sky bridge and immediately jumping off the side.
Damn. Is it broken?
And I took damage. Falling damage, at least. So based on my testing, when you go into the simulation, your character becomes invincible. You stop taking falling damage. Then after you leave the simulation, the game takes a little time to put things back. For a short period of time, you're still invincible. But then, it fixes itself. I should note that I haven't seen this reported by anyone else. So this is just solely based on my own experiences. And I suppose there could be any number of weird gremlins in my machine, but this is what I experienced. And that is the Virtual Workshop Creation Club creation. A creation that's going for 1,000 credits. So, was it worth it? $10? As I always say, I think this creation is overpriced. I don't think the creation we get is worth $10. That said, I'm blown away by this creation. When Bethesda started talking about the Creation Club, they tried to differentiate the creations from mods by saying, no, they're mini DLCs. And as much as I like the Creation Club creations, few of them have felt like mini DLCs to me. This one, however, does. It feels like a Wasteland Workshop or Contraptions Workshop mini DLC. We get 4 new places to build, one of which itself has 4 different settlements. I can see myself enjoying hours and hours of settlement building gameplay with this creation. As I explored every location, my imagination was just going into overdrive, all of the different things that I could build. It got me really excited. Now, as always, we each have our own list of what ifs and should have beens. What if we could turn our character's invulnerability on or off, so that we could choose whether or not our character could take damage from the virtual enemies in the virtual landscapes? What if there was an ability to scrap all junk in the settlements to make it less tedious to go around scrapping all of the existing junk? Or what if there was an ability to scrap all of the stuff we had created in a virtual settlement with one easy button push to simply reset it all, so we don't have to go through and scrap everything individually? Maybe that could have been a feature. Maybe it should have been. I think it would have been nice to have a fast travel option for the island in particular, so that we can fast travel to all of the different settlement locations on the island, because that's a lot of running around to get between all 4 of those locations. The bamboo set was a little disappointing. It didn't really feel complete. There were only 2 options, the wall and the door frame. No grass-thatched roof, no floor. It didn't feel finished. That was a bit of a bummer. It would have been nice to customize our settlers, put them in unique outfits, give them better weaponry. I found that the settlers were absolutely worthless compared to the aliens when I ran that test. One shot and they were all down. It would be nice if the spawn markers would disappear outside of workshop mode, so we didn't always have that constant reminder that we were in a VR simulation while running around building our settlement. I think we could all sit down and make a nice list of all of the things that could have been in this creation or should have been in this creation. But overall, I'm still really impressed with what we got. Again, it's not worth $10. That's way too expensive. But I could see myself getting more hours of enjoyment out of this creation than almost any other creation that the Creation Club has offered so far. This is one of the few creations that I think really lives up to the description of a mini DLC. So in my book, Bethesda deserves a bit of a round of applause for this one. Good job, guys. Very well done. But those are just my thoughts, ladies and gentlemen, and I would love to hear what you've got to say. Are you big into settlement building? And if so, is this creation something you're interested in? Or are you underwhelmed with what you saw, and you think it could have been, nay, should have been better? Let me know in the comments section below. I publish many Fallout videos each and every week, so if you don't want to miss my next episode, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. If you have and you still feel like you're missing out on YouTube notifications, consider following me on Twitter at Oxhorn. I update Twitter manually with every new piece of content that I publish. I've got a brand new shirt in the shop, Enclave. Boast your support for the Enclave and everything they stand for with this brand new design that comes on shirts in a variety of men's, women's, and children's sizes and in a wide array of colors. You can find it on other products as well, like smartphone cases, pillows, posters, mugs, stickers, prints, etc. So if interested, you can find a link to my shop in the description below, or you can click here. If you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming a patron on Patreon or a member here on YouTube. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon with more brand new videos.